Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice oh boy, tongue twister there. Janice Malillo, and I am the host. And this is a podcast today, not on Christmas, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But today's guest is on my author series segment. And let me just tell you, I just love her. I loved her book, by the way. And let me just show that real quick. And then, of course, and we might be getting a little bit of a glare with everything going on here with the background. Um, Absolutely fascinating book. And I have a question. Sometimes I start with a question, just in general, to the audience that will be listening. What do you do when you feel like you need to take a break, specifically a career break? Well, today's guest did just that. And she wrote Taking a Career Break for Dummies. I am so excited to welcome to today's podcast, Katrina McGhee. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Katrina McGhee, you got it, Janice. Thank
Okay.
you so much. I have been looking forward to our episode for months. I just am so ready for this and I'm ready to dive into it, but I really appreciate being here. So I'm excited to be doing this.
Yeah, me too. And let's just chat about first the what's going on over here with my background. As I was explaining to Katrina, I did a podcast Tuesday evening. I didn't have a background. I cannot figure out how to get the background off. And there we are. It's a Christmas background. Don't know how it got there, but in any event, for those of you listening, when Katrina logged on, she was like, oh, so,
I just thought you really like Christmas, Janice. I was like, she's a big fan of Christmas.
well, I do love Christmas, but we'll figure it out later. But first of all, thank you for writing this book. This is a phenomenal book, and I really could not put this book down. And I've been blessed to read so many amazing books, Katrina. This is certainly one of them. And of course, I typically I try to take some of the stickies off, but I didn't get around to doing that. But I want to start by kind of asking you a personal question.
Okay.
Why did you want to take a career break?
Because I was at a stage in my life where I didn't like the life that I had, but it looked so good on the outside. So I could not find the problem. Um, I had the things, I had the job, I made the money, I had the house, and yet I did not feel good. And something felt really broken and wrong. I really struggled to be excited for the work that I was doing every day. It felt like a really huge slog to have to go to work every day. And that feeling of burned out mixed with misalignment, mixed with bored out, perhaps, I just, I needed a change and I didn't know how to do that. And so it took me 6 months of working with a life coach to have this epiphany when I cleared the space and all the limiting beliefs that were surrounding it. I just wanted to go live my life. I wanted to have adventures again. And I wanted to believe that even though I was in my 30s at that time, that there was still a lot of good, exciting, fun things ahead in my life, waiting for me to discover instead of just more of the same, which I was not, as I said before, feeling. So that was what prompted me to take a break. It was really this desire to just go live. And I really wanted to travel. That was like one of my main motivations. It wasn't the only one, but I just wanted to see the world on more than my, 10, 18-day PTO allotment would allow.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned limiting beliefs. And I know that we've all had them. I know that I've had them myself. In fact, I was having a conversation with my sister this morning, and I said to her, well, I'm not good at this particular thing. I'm just going to leave it at there. And, I was okay with saying that because I truly believe that. But like for others, it can really be very deeply and rooted in so many different things that we do. I think the limiting beliefs a lot of times is exactly what holds us back until you work through the things that we need to work through. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I really feel that was a pivotal point for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And limiting beliefs are part of the human brain. Like that's just if you're doing life as a human, that comes with it. I still have some, right? I discover new edges in entrepreneurship every day, like new limiting beliefs I have to challenge or limiting beliefs about aging, right? It's part of it, but can you discover them and make peace with them, remove them, like navigate around them so that you can continue growing and experiencing the life that you want to experience?
Hmm. So we're going to dive right into this book because we have so much to chat about, and just saying you, I definitely have to have you on again soon. Because there's
Happily.
so much to
Yeah.
cover. I want to start first with something in here that really stuck out to me. Obviously, how you laid out the book and how you did it in different parts, obviously the different chapters, but what captured my eyes, the first thing, and I had to read this chapter first, 10 ground rules for a successful break. And I'm like, is it all right with you if I read a couple of them off?
Ah, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Creating your own definition of success, planning for a re-entry period. Do we have to? Knowing your numbers, leaving your job on great terms, and I'll just share one more because we have so much to chat about here. Disconnecting from the working world. And I want to start right there because I really think that when you're considering a career break, you really do have to not only physically disconnect from the working world, but from the everyday woes and things that come with the working world.
Yeah, absolutely. I put this in the ground rules because it's genuinely one of the biggest mistakes I see people make that take breaks without coaching, right? So if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have someone in your corner who's lived it, experienced it, helped other people do it, a lot of times, and I see this stuff on like Forbes or Business Insider, like sometimes, massive media outlets will have articles that talk about keep your network warm. You never know when you're going to need a job. Like, be sure to check in. Like, just be, like keep your LinkedIn profile updated. Like, all these things that keep your brain still focused on your old life in your job. And a lot of why people need this break is because they don't have any disconnection from work. We take work home with us. We think about work even when we're not working. We are on our phones and like our work email is on there. And so it's this amazing moment to remember that you are so much more than the work that you do. But I see people struggle with that because they're so focused on finding a job after the break or being able to get employment after the break that they worry fully disconnecting is going to harm them when the opposite is true. It's basically like if you were to take a 1 week vacation and then worry about like cleaning your house a little bit every day, at the end of that vacation, you're still going to feel tired and you're not really going to feel like you were on vacation because you were trying to do the practical thing. It's like that. And so I want people to know that because it's counterintuitive for a lot of people.
That is so true. Think about that for a moment where you were just talking about the actual physical disconnection, and you're worried about LinkedIn, you're worried about this, you're worried about that. And you're still doing the things that you're trying to disconnect from. And
Yeah.
if you sat back for a moment and say, like, wait a minute, like disconnect means disconnect.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, to my friend, sidebar, who just sent me a funny text, will just say, these are not Christmas tree earrings, okay? That was very funny. I had to share that. Okay, moving right along. Um, the next tag I have here, let me get to it. Obviously, I love wellness. I learned about wellness really in my excuse me, my early 40s, and I have a love of wellness through fitness and nutrition. And many people know that I have a podcast with my sister and we chat about all things wellness. And you really dove into this aspect of it, and I loved it. Restoring and improving your physical well-being. Well, that's a given, right? But we don't take the time to do that. And now we have the time to work on that.
Absolutely. I think it's a really important part of what can be waiting for you on a break because these bodies, I mean, you know this, these bodies are going to carry us through to the end. So a lot of times there's neglect that happens when we're grinding it out for work, right? We have so many responsibilities, so many things to do, maybe taking a walk, maybe eating well and needing to like prepare some of our food or just take time to go, grocery shop and spend more time being thoughtful about what we're eating. Like these things take time, they take energy. And a break is an amazing point in time where you can reset habits. So you can pour into the parts of you that are feeling neglected, but then you can also reestablish a new autopilot so that when you return to work, it's easier to maintain a healthy, balanced life that has more wellness, right? That you feel more solid and you've really given a boost to this temple that's going to carry you through the last decades of your life. And some of my clients struggle with severe health issues, and that's part of why they actually have to take a break. So it's partly medically induced. And it gives you time to resolve those issues and sometimes to figure out what they were. One of my clients didn't know what her mystery illness was and discovered she had Lyme disease, but she needed time to do all the testing and to go to the doctors and do the thing until she found an answer to
Mhm.
understand what was going on with her. And then obviously needed time to work on healing that. And that's very hard to do if you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, grinding it out in life and then doing all the admin stuff, like
Sure.
outside of work on top of that.
Yeah. And, thank you so much for sharing that because I think a lot of what we do, obviously, we carry with us. As I mentioned to you before we signed on, I work full time as a paralegal, and that involves sometimes a lot of time, and you have to kind of step back from that and allow yourself the opportunity to recharge your batteries.
Yes.
What is one thing that you like to do to recharge your batteries?
Ooh, I have a rebellious spirit
I
and
wouldn't have known that.
yeah, right. Ah, so this sounds kind of silly, but for me, whenever I feel like I'm being a little rebellious, I think it's tapping into the feeling of freedom. I find that it pours magical energy into my spirit. So that could be something as simple as deciding at like 1 p.m. on a work day, I'm just going to go to a coffee shop to get a coffee and I'm going to sit there and not work. Or maybe I'm going to go to, like my favorite shop and I'm just going to go window shop for a while, but doing something that feels air quotes like irresponsible or whatever, but just really embracing what feels good for me in that moment. It's so restorative. Just taking time away from work or from the grind or, the structure of what I think I should be doing sometimes to just indulge my sense of joy, the sense of
Mhm.
pleasure. It feels really like restorative for me to do that. And I think it taps into that rebellious part.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And obviously I love to read. And I love listening to podcasts and I'm in the midst right now of creating my own digital lifestyle magazine. And a friend of mine said to me, like, how, "Oh, you're doing too much." And I'm like, no, I'm creatively working, but it's not work for me. It's therapeutic,
Yeah.
and it
I've
really I get excited thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like it's great to know that that's a source of energy for you and tapping into our creativity and curiosity is I think that is like a vibe as far as being restorative and pouring into ourselves. So if that's giving you that, right? Like it's like, yeah, lean into that.
Mhm. I neglected to say, and I do apologize, you are a life coach,
Yeah,
and
certified
I
life
think
coach.
yeah, and I think that I wanna touch upon that for a moment because you had mentioned obviously that you had considered obviously a career break and you were working with your life coach. And your life coach obviously inspired you to become a life coach. And I think that that is a very magical connection. When you decided to do that, like I always love to hear the backdrop story of when someone decides to do something like that because that takes a lot of courage sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like many things in life, it was planting of several seeds, right? It was like planting the seed, like nurturing the seed, couple of seeds, and then some of them start to bloom. So for me, my dad has a master's in psychology. I've always been curious about people. I love asking questions. That's always been my personality. But I didn't really want to go the massive amounts of education in psychology and work on like deep traumatic things. That was not my jam. So I just sort of put that out of my mind, but I've always been curious about people. So when I met my life coach in my early 30s, I didn't know what life coaching was. This was 2011. We did it out of her house in her home office, like it wasn't an online business or anything. And so it blew my mind that there was this other way to help people with their minds and to indulge your curiosity and care and interest in people that didn't require massive amounts of education, but that was also focused on helping people get what they want and looking forward versus trying to make sense of the past and make peace with, traumatic events or things that have happened in the past. And so that planted a huge seed, but I still didn't have the courage to go launch my own business. And I remember thinking, I would love to do what she's doing, but it felt so far out of reach. So I took my break. And when I came back, I actually decided like I'm going to go back to corporate to pay off the last 40 something thousand dollars worth of student loan debt so that I can do it quickly. But during that time, right before I came back, I did a adult enrichment class called Having a Life Coach Business. And I was like, well, what is that? And then I met the woman that ended up becoming the woman I would get certified with. And so it all kind of like just kept building. And then once my debt was paid off, I was like, I can do anything I want now. I can be an entrepreneur. I can do all these things. I just felt this sense of financial freedom I hadn't felt before. So I reconnected with the woman and decided to do her certification. And I got certified in 2016. And so that became, that kind of became the thing. But it took several different touch points for it to become like for me to find the courage and the clarity to actually do it.
Hmm. That is so interesting because you talked about having the courage. Did you believe you had the courage or did you like work toward the courage?
Work toward it. So I am a very courageous person, but to tie back to what you brought up with limiting beliefs, I
Mhm.
had a limiting belief that I just was never capable of being an entrepreneur. So it wasn't even like if I was brave enough, I could. It was like, that's not what I do. I work smart corporate jobs because I need health insurance. And I do, like it just wasn't in my reality. It was a very limiting belief. But once I identified at the end of my break where I'm feeling really empowered, when I identified that I wanted to do something outside of corporate, I realized life coaching could be that thing, but what was holding me back was my fear of money and debt. So like my student loan payment was like 700 and something dollars a month. And I remember thinking, I will never be able to get a business off the ground if every month I'm worried about making that $700 payment. And so it was like, okay, then my strategy brain says, we have to eliminate that obstacle. You've got to pay off your debt. Let's do it as fast as possible. How can we make that happen? So I built courage by taking it one obstacle at a time, but also facing those limiting beliefs that we talked about.
Wow. I got the chills when you were talking about that because think I'm thinking of all the people out there that were in that position like you were and are working on that courage toward doing that. And I just want to say to you out there, if you're listening now or if you listen to on Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can do it. Katrina,
Absolutely.
what would you say to someone listening to that?
I would say if you don't feel particularly courageous in this moment, that's okay. That's okay. That nothing has gone wrong. You need two things. You need clarity. So when you feel more clear on what you want, it becomes higher stakes to get it. You're willing to do more to get it, and you're willing to be more resourceful about how you go about getting it, right? And number two is you need action. So once you get the clarity, just take a step. I couldn't go from zero to life coach overnight, right? It's like I couldn't even become debt free overnight. It still took 2 years of saving and planning, but I got clear that I wanted to feel free and that I wanted to do this entrepreneurial adventure of being a life coach. And then I got clear that my obstacle was the money. So then I just was like, okay, I've got to start saving for this now. And I did it, right? But it's like clarity and then action. And you just keep taking those little actions every day and they add up to one gigantic action over time.
Mm, that is so true. Like take those little actions each day. Now, how would one, if they're in the midst of thinking about that, which ties up to what I want to ask you right now, is establishing that timeline. Like you give such amazing, detailed, accurate information. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, like you are a go-getter, but the courage to sit down and do this to me is astounding. I mean, you really go into very detailed oriented tips. In fact, one of the things that you talk about is deciding on, excuse me, how much you want to spend.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I have to give props to my publisher, right? Wiley and the Dummies brand, because they really forced me to be super granular in thinking things through and explaining them in a way where a reader doesn't need me coaching them or explaining things to them for them to get the process. And that honestly, Janice, was really hard. Like there were sections of the book where I have done this for other people, but I didn't know how I did it. And to like go back and have to like break down your own process for something and explain it in a way that people don't need you to explain it to them. I mean, that was honestly very challenging. It was one of my own mental hurdles I had to get past is that I could do this. But yes, I mean, knowing your number is really important, right? When you think about the timeline, when you think about what's possible, it's an empowering piece of information to know how far away you are, right? From a savings perspective. But then also developing this estimate tells you, okay, once I have this amount, I can give myself permission to take a break. If you don't know your number, it's easy to feel like it's never going to arrive. That even if you had $20,000 saved, it's not enough. So it gives specificity and clarity to how far you are from your goal. And it also gives you permission once you cross that threshold. And so I really wanted people from all different perspectives, right? Like whether you already have the money or you're far away from the goal, like I was. I had to save $40,000 to take my break, right? I did it in 18 months, but I did it partly because I was super clear on what that number was. I want people to feel empowered to like move towards the goal, but also give themselves permission when they've reached it.
And I would assume when you're in the midst of doing that, that you really need to kind of look at your overview like on a monthly basis. In other words, you mentioned, you wanted to pay off that debt and you did it in 18 months. Congratulations, by the way. That is flipping awesome.
Yeah.
But as you said, like let's say if you had a bad month for whatever reason and you couldn't put what you wanted
Yeah.
to aside.
Yeah.
So really over taking an overview and saying, okay, you have to also plan for things that pop out of the blue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, two things to that. Number one is anytime you're budgeting for a big change like this, if you're planning a break, I padded my number with emergency fund money, right? Like unexpected money. Like I didn't know that I could go play with elephants in northern Thailand. And once I'm there, I want to go, but it's $100 to go for the day. And so I wanted to have money that went above and beyond what I pre-budgeted for. But then also things happen. I owned a townhouse that I was renting out and I wasn't profiting on it. I was basically doing it like it was like a wash, basically. But if an appliance broke or a handyman needed to be called, like I was going to have to front that money. And so I also wanted some emergency fund for that as well. So anytime you're creating an estimate, I encourage you to pad it or round it up so that you have money for that just in case moment, right? It's really important to have that. But then also, when you're budgeting and saving, I saved $40,000 in 18 months. It wasn't easy, but I did it. But like being able to track an average is important because to your point, I had 2 painful months when I started trying to save where my tenant unexpectedly at the time, who was a great tenant, moved out. And then I'm paying the mortgage, I'm paying the homeowners association, I'm paying the utilities, and I'm spending $1,000 to have it painted and I'm getting things repaired. And it was like a huge vacuum was coming and sucking all of this money I was trying so hard to save out of my account. But I knew that I was in a better place for all that stuff that was going to happen because I'd already been saving and I kept having a bigger picture of like, okay, these are 2 bad months, but I'm still working towards this goal because life will ebb and flow. Unexpected things will happen, but always knowing that average, even when you're on your break, if you're having an expensive month, knowing that next month you maybe need to make different decisions to save some money. Or on the positive side, if you're doing really well, like I did, and you're like, man, I'm not even spending as much as I thought, you can extend your timeline or you can do something more exciting. My break went from 12 months, which was my plan, to 20 months because of that.
Wow. And of course, how do you get the most out of your break?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many ways to go about it, but no matter how you approach it, you need to know what success is for you, right? That's number one. Because if you give yourself what you need and want for this time, you will reach that goal of success. People get distracted by sexy things like travel, and travel is important for some of my clients. But some of my clients, almost a third of my clients don't travel internationally at all during their break. That's not what it's about. So, making the most of your time starts with the foundation of being clear about how you even want to spend that time to meet your ultimate need, to achieve the successful purpose of your break. But once you're in that space and you know what success is, you've got to give yourself time to decompress. You've got to give yourself time to enjoy the break. If you think about the wheel of life, your career and money are two slices of like an 8 to 10 slice pie. They're important, but they're not all that there is to your life. And I think moving through a break is going to require you to get very uncomfortable with rest because we love to be productive. We love to prove and justify our existence, right? It's like I did all these things, so I know today was a good day because I really showed up and I was really productive. That's great. And you don't always have to be doing to justify living. Sometimes being is more than enough. And sometimes being is wellness. Sometimes being is restorative, right? Well, pretty much all the time being can be restorative, but you want to really have this understanding of giving yourself permission to decompress from your experience and be willing to be uncomfortable with concepts like rest, right? Concepts like uncertainty, not knowing what comes at the end of your break. So making the most of this time is having check-ins with yourself where you're processing, you're reflecting back on your ultimate goal or goals for this time off. You're clear on what success is, but you're also willing to be uncomfortable. You're also willing to try things differently, and you're also willing to rest. That's honestly the hardest thing I struggle with my client, or my clients are struggling with when they're working with me once they're on a break, is being okay with resting.
Wow. I think I need a rest too.
I know, Janice, you have this magical kinetic energy where you can do so many things and it's so incredible. And I'm sure, right? Like I'm sure resting might feel uncomfortable because you seem to keep yourself in motion, creating and doing a lot of things. It's really incredible.
Well, thank you. I mean, I enjoy doing that. And
Yeah.
I would have, when I went back to work as a sidebar, I went back to work full time back in July, and I technically was only hired for like 1 day a week, and then it was 2 days a week, and then they just said, we're going to hire you full time. I wasn't prepared for that. However, I really love my job, but I had to find, to your point, I had to find where I was comfortable, with and what I was uncomfortable with, and how do I balance that? Because these other things are important to me. But I think when we're looking at what our success is, what our goals are, I think it's okay to break some of the ground rules. Do you think it's okay to
Yes.
break some of those ground rules?
I think it's necessary. This is an amazing inflection point in your life where you can create a whole different way of living post break than what you experienced pre break. And of all my clients, I've coached 83 career breaks to date. If you were to ask my clients, especially the ones that worked with me for a significant amount of time, what they got from their break that was so meaningful, I believe that every one of them would have an answer that centered around changing their perspective because they approached life differently and they questioned things in that break and they were willing to be uncomfortable and to do things differently. But it's this perspective shift of what is possible in your life, what is okay, what you deserve, right? You deserve rest. You deserve joy. These aren't things you work 1,000 hours to earn. You deserve them. You just have to create the space and prioritize them, right? And also how you value your time and how you value all the parts of your life and where you're pouring that time into. And I just find over and over again, it changes how people see their lives and it changes how they approach the time and energy that they have and how they're like portioning that out in the various aspects of their life.
Mm. Excuse me. Yes, creating that space and prioritizing, when you think of, I know like when I'm in my home office on the weekends, and I think of just that, how do my okay, I've got all these things to do. Well, how do I prioritize it? Well, the first thing that I do is do my breathing exercises. I'm going to share that.
Oh, good.
Because sometimes it can feel overwhelming, right? And then clarity starts to kind of pop in. And my perspective on the shift is that, you know, what is the ultimate goal that I want to achieve? And of course, the digital magazine was kind of born from that. But it's exciting to think that we can go from um, that we can work on our goals in such a way where it doesn't feel overwhelming is the point I'm trying to get at. Because
Yeah.
I obviously enjoy and love what I do, as you
Yes.
do, right?
Yes, I do. I really do. I'll be honest though, Janice, I'm an overworker. And what I think the difference is between you and me, like I feel like you just might be a person that has naturally a lot of energy and like gets energy from staying in motion. And I'm more of a like slow person. Like I like to think things and like just sort of be moving more slowly in life. But I think the other difference is when I'm overworking, my overworking is coming from a place of I don't want to fail. I need this to be good. I need this to work. And so it's that undercurrent of I'm not doing enough that propels me into the working and the overworking and the doing more work. And that's something I'm honestly always working on, right? Like I talked about entrepreneurial life pushes me to new limits and challenges, limiting beliefs in a different way. That's one of them, right? That I'm only going to be successful if I hustle my way to it. So like let me do what I've always done, which is work really hard. And that doesn't have to be true. But for you, what you're describing is that your energy and motion is coming from an underlying belief of, I'm enjoying this and I want to do it. And it's coming from a place of like, I'm so excited or I'm finding joy in this. And like, I'm being pulled towards this desire to do more versus I love what I do. I just need to have better boundaries on how many hours a day I'm doing it. Because when I'm overworking, like 10 hours, 12 hours in the day, it's coming from a place of, "Oh, I've gotta do this thing or else it's not gonna work or I have to." And so that's like one of my edges that I'm always working on. We're humans, always a work in progress.
Oh, I'm going to be 62 in less than a month or in about a month, and I'm still a work in progress, the way I look at it. Oh my gosh. Before we sign off, are you working on your next book?
Oh, no, Janice. I went to an intuitive reader who told me during my reading that I was gonna be writing 3 books. He was like, "This is just the first of 3." And I was like, no, you're wrong. And she was like, no, I'm not wrong. And we argued about it for like a whole minute. And I was like, no, I'm not. And so it's funny. I've had people ask me that. I can tell you this. Writing a For Dummies book, which is basically a reference book. I mean, check out the index, right? Like there's so
Mhm.
much detail and so much thought that went into it. I feel like I climbed Mount Everest, my own Mount Everest, because I was not a writer before this book. And I just want to like gloat and celebrate and boast that I climbed Everest for a good like year or two. It is possible that after I've, come down from that high and really like, moved on, that I will create space to write another book. It would probably be a simpler book. But people say it's like having kids. Like when you have one, it's so dramatic. You're like, I'm never doing that again. And then like 2 years later, you're like, I think I'd like to have another kid. So maybe it is like that. I don't know. I don't have kids, but at this point, no, but never say never.
That is so true. Can you let us know how our viewers and listeners can connect with you?
Absolutely. If you are thinking about taking a break or wanting to know more about this, of course you can get the book, but I have a list of 45 of the most epic things that my past clients have done on a break. And it is a super fun list. Some of them traveled abroad, some of them did certifications like equine healing and started an animal sanctuary. Some of them learned how to keep bees at home. So it's a whole range. People with kids, people single, people with partners. But if you want that inspiration, I find one of the biggest stuck points for people is imagining what it could look like. So I put this list together and it will inspire you and also help paint a picture of what a break could look like. And then you'll be on my mailing list as well. So you'll get lots of other goodies and free resources and things dripped out. So check that out if that interests you.
Wonderful. And of course, I will make sure all of your contact information is in the show notes. This has been so phenomenal. I just want to share the cover of your book again. Even if you are remotely, and I mean remotely thinking about taking a career break, this book is amazing. It will really give you such an insight on what you need to do and how to do it. And of course, you can always reach out to Katrina. Katrina, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to be with us here today. Truly, you have inspired me.
Thank you so much, Janice.
Well, everyone, that's it for today. And again, please check out her book. It is amazing. I'm going to give it a 20-star review if there is one. I will certainly put that in the show notes. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. If you have a story to share, you need to do that because someone is waiting to hear your story. And thank you all. And if you are viewing this on YouTube, Rumble, or BitChute, Merry Christmas in April. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye for now.